Hey, Adam, quick question. Have you ever been to Caribana?
My parents took me when I was younger, but I haven't been in some time.
Okay, so that's a no in a long time. And just so everyone's clear, this is the same man on this podcast who said that he doesn't like beef patties.
Okay, I did not say I didn't like them. I said I rarely eat them. The last one basically disintegrated in my hands, which were a greasy, though delicious, flaky crime scene.
I don't know if that's a patty problem or that's a you problem. If your lunch turns into a crime scene, you need better patty hookups. You need an auntie in Scarborough with a side hustle and strong opinions about crust integrity.
Does she come with a crash course on how not to wear the filling on my shirt?
Okay, all right. I'll let your lack of patty credentials slide because today's episode, it's a big one.
Is it bigger than a band leader's feathered backpack?
Easily. Because we're diving chronologically into the music, the food, the costumes, and the real story behind Caribana. Because this isn't just Toronto's wildest weekend, it's a cultural institution with deep Caribbean roots and a serious Canadian impact.
This is more than just dancing in the street.
Way more. Caribana is about migration, resistance, artistry, community, and joy. It started in 1967, Canada's Centennial, as a gift from the Caribbean community to the country. Since then, it's grown into the largest cultural festival in North America. We're talking over 1 million people, 400 million in economic impact, and more feathers than a Vegas revue.
And it's not just locals that attend. Every year, busloads of tourists cross the border just to get a taste. Caribana is international now, though one could argue it always was.
Exactly. Caribana weekend might be the only time Torontonians talk to tourists from Atlanta who say things like, "Y'all got Uber up here?"
And somehow know more about Toronto's hotel options than we do.
They come for the parties. But this thing started with Steel Pan and Calypso on Yonge Street, with mass bands built by hand, with aunties cooking oxtail and getting mad if you don't take seconds. Today, we're covering the full journey, how Caribana started, how it evolved, the controversies, the costumes, the community. We'll talk about the parade, the King and Queen showcase, Pan Alive, and of course, the food. Because if you leave hungry, you did it wrong.
You also might have to eat in the parking lot because I've heard the real food is often behind the scenes.
True. Some of the best jerk chicken you'll ever taste is getting grilled in a folding chair beside a Honda Civic. But for real, this episode is for the people who've been to every Grand Parade, and for the people who never set foot on Lakeshore. If you live in Toronto, this is part of your story.
You probably didn't hear this because I assumed that Gray edited it out, but the first time through, when he tried to say jerk chicken, it came out as jerkin, and we both started giggling like we're 10 years old because this is the level of maturity that we have. But on the more general point, I'm ready, and if I manage to eat a patty without wearing it, I'll consider it personal growth.
That's the spirit, Adam. Guys, this is Caribana, the soul of Toronto summer.
I'm Adam Weiser.
And I'm Grayson Miller. And this is Muddy York. All right, let's rewind the tape to Toronto, 1967, Centennial year. The Maple Leaf flag was barely 2 years old. Expo 67 was drawing crowds in Montreal. Pearson was prime minister, the CN Tower wasn't even a hole in the ground yet, and downtown Toronto still proudly answering to its old nickname, Hogtown. The air smelled like cigarette smoke, hot asphalt, and the lingering perfume of pig processing plants. You could catch the scent of pea-meal bacon before you caught a streetcar. But something new was brewing, not in the halls of Parliament, but in church basements, community centers, and tiny apartments above Eglinton West shops. A group of Caribbean immigrants, teachers, lawyers, civil servants had an idea. While the rest of the country was busy planting tulips and building hedge mazes for Canada's Centennial, they were planning something louder, bolder, and rooted in Carnival tradition. They called it Caribana, and they pulled it off with vibes and enough red tape to gift wrap City Hall. What the Toronto Star called a wing-ding one-week celebration designed to pale the 67 efforts of any other metro ethnic community was actually 9 months in the making. And this what
I'd just like to interject that I feel like we don't use the term wingding enough. It's fallen out of fashion. I don't know why.
I know it has. And this wasn't some backyard operation. We're talking serious minds. Like I said, a doctor, 2 lawyers, a town planner, and a teacher. All Caribbean-born professionals living in Toronto who saw culture not just as heritage, but as strategy. At a fire hall meeting in late 1966, they chose to model the festival after Trinidad Carnival because, let's be honest, nobody throws a party quite like Trini's. And they picked the August-long weekend for a reason. Statistically, the lowest chance of rain. You'll see why that was a bold bet as the story unfolds. On February 21st, 1967, Samuel A. Cole, the committee's executive chairman, wrote to the city officials requesting permission to host a full-on West Indian cultural showcase on Olympic Island, known better today as Toronto Island Park. He pitched it as a gift to the city, a West Indian salute for Canada's centenary. The letter wasn't just bureaucratic formality, it laid out a vision, steel bands, cultural exhibits, performances, and serious crowd appeal. And they weren't improvising. They already contacted Caribbean governments, and the response? Enthusiastic. The city said yes, with one condition. It couldn't cost Metro, the regional government in charge of major services at the time, a cent. And if you remember your civics, Metro wasn't just a name. It was the upper-tier municipal authority overseeing everything from transit to waste. So, when they said no funding, it meant no funding. So the committee rolled up their sleeves. Of the $50,000 required, just $4,000 came in as advance support. The rest raised within the community, dollar by dollar.
When Caribana 67 launched, it was packed. Olympic Island came alive with steel bands, calypso contests, vibrant dance performances, engaging drama, and even a bustling fruit and vegetable market. 10 Caribbean nations participated, along with Bermuda and Guyana. They even went as far as planting coconut trees on the island. The attention to detail was enviable. The parade route started at Varsity Stadium, paused at City Hall, and concluded at the docks. 1,000 participants marched in costumes crafted by hand, accompanied by 5 calypso bands, all cheered on by about 50,000 spectators. Of course, there were some hiccups. Having thousands of people waiting to get transportation to the island caused major stress, as it still does. To top it off, from the very start, floats departed late. The ferries to the island were overwhelmed with capacity, and at one point on the island, there was a power outage, and bands had to play in the dark. Despite these challenges, Caribana quickly became the standout event of Centennial 67 in Toronto. You want to add that proviso because Montrealers will not take it well if you try to steal the crown from Expo 67. On the final Sunday, Olympic Island welcomed 32,000 visitors, setting ferry service records. The surprise visit by Jamaica's Governor General, Sir Clifford Campbell, underscored that Caribana had transcended a mere festival. It was now a movement. Even though during the event, some performances got overshadowed by enthusiastic crowds, the atmosphere remained vibrant and truly unstoppable. Even Toronto Mayor William Dennison recognized its significance, urging organizers to make Caribana an annual celebration. Yes, mistakes happened, but Chairman Cole put it best. Caribana wasn't just participating in centennial celebrations, it was actively reshaping Toronto's cultural identity. Over the next few years, the festival kept growing. By 1972, Caribana, now 5 years in, was facing significant growing pains. The initial 9-day festival on Olympic Island had been cut down to 3 days due to budget constraints. Jacob Isaacs, the festival's financial chair at the time, directly pointed to high overhead costs and low attendance. In 1971, they spent $60,000, that's in 1971 dollars, attracted 45,000 attendees, and earned only a modest $5,000 profit. For 1972, they increased the budget to about $85,000, introduced food stalls, secured a liquor license to serve beer, and hoped for the best. The year also saw some government help for once. The city and province chipped in. Caribana received grants from Ontario, the City of Toronto, and Metro. But logistically, the parade now moved along Bloor and Yonge Streets, ending at City Hall with a concert at Nathan Phillips Square. The parade featured an impressive 10,000 participants. Unfortunately, rain dramatically reduced attendance on the festival's final day, and only 2,000 people showed up, instead of the anticipated 7,000. Media reactions weren't exactly supportive either. Negative opinion pieces emerged, emphasizing concerns about crowds, drinking, littering, and inadequate policing. A typical moral panic scenario familiar to any festival that experiences enthusiastic crowds, and especially common in a city that was founded by Puritan Methodists.
The following year, 1973, the festival was in full survival mode. Treasurer Peter Marceline openly worried that another rainy year might force the festival to shut down permanently. To put even more stress on the festival, the generosity of the government in 1972 was gone by 1973. Government funding dropped significantly, with only $2,000 coming from the province and $2,500 from the city. Minimal at best. Yet, despite limited resources, 20,000 determined attendees showed up at Center Island. That's genuine resilience. With the highs of 1973 came the lows of 1974. This was almost Caribana's final year. Metro Council refused a crucial $25,000 grant, nearly causing the Caribbean Cultural Committee, the CCC, to cancel the entire event. Committee Vice Chair Elmore Daisy clearly expressed his frustration, saying, "So many other groups receive support that we're beginning to think there is something fundamentally wrong with the attitude towards Black groups like ours." Thankfully, a last-minute $12,000 bank loan saved the festival. Ferry cruises, the Caribbean Ball at the Royal York, and the parade proceeded, attracting 50,000 spectators. Unfortunately, only 12,000 attended the island's events due to yet another rainy setback. In contrast, 1975 marked a significant rebound. The government funding roller coaster was at its height, and the budget rose again to $80,000 and featured prominent artists from Jamaica, Barbados, and St. Kitts, including limbo queen Peggy Jackson. The parade expected 50,000 spectators, but impressively doubled that, attracting 100,000 people. Ferry cruises sold out, with visitors pouring in from the U.S. Remarkably, tourism to the Caribbean also increased significantly. Caribana had evolved into a cultural ambassador, inspiring attendees to seek out more Carnival experiences. The success of the 1975 event brought increased attention to the festival, and in 1976, internal politics escalated as more individuals and organizations sought to get involved and influence its direction. Two separate organizing groups, the CCC and the newly established Carnival Development Association, shared responsibilities. Some events were held at Harbourfront while others continued on Center Island. The arrangement was complicated but ultimately successful. The same year featured a costume controversy. Previously, elaborate outfits had been discarded after the parade, but this year organizers chose to preserve and display them publicly. This subtle yet significant shift symbolized Caribana's recognition as a lasting cultural legacy rather than a disposable celebration. In 1977 and 78, the divide between the organizing groups continued. Financial issues worsened by 1978, and with lingering debt from the previous year and a growing concern that the entire festival might collapse. But it didn't. Somehow, they pulled it off. Byron Lee and the Dragonaires performed. Children took to the streets in their own parades, and the community showed up ready to celebrate once again.
By 1979, Metro Council offered a $7,500 grant to help sustain the festival. The Caribbean star power didn't fade. Sparrow, Mendingo, Exile One all headlined. Caribana kept over-delivering despite its modest resources. By the time the 80s roll around, Caribana isn't just surviving, it's evolving. Bigger budgets, bigger crowds, and bigger questions. In 1980, The budget sat at $150,000, but just a year later, it had doubled to $300,000. And Caribana had officially evolved from a scrappy street festival into a major cultural institution. 1982 arrives, and the festival is back on the roller coaster, this time at the bottom. The festival was expecting 300,000 people from Canada, the US, and the Caribbean. But the budget? It had dropped to just 178,000. That led to cuts across the board. The Caribana magazine was shelved, fewer high-profile Caribbean performers were invited, and even the parade had to be scaled back. Organizers described it as smaller, more focused, and easier to manage, but in truth, it was still organized chaos, just with fewer dollars behind it. Things picked up again in 1983. Ferry cruises, calypso contests, dance competitions, and community picnics all returned. And of course, the Saturday parade on July 30th drew a solid crowd, an estimated 250,000 people. Remember, Toronto was much smaller then, so that actually made up a decent percentage of the people living here. Caribana was regaining momentum. By 1984, the Caribbean Cultural Committee shifted to a more strategic approach. They introduced a 3-year plan to pay off debt and improve the festival's reputation. The budget climbed back to $300,000. With that, they added upscale events, like the West Indian Dinner, and opened a cultural pavilion at College Park, filled with art, theater, crafts, and storytelling. The parade that year created major traffic issues. A new route only added to the gridlock, and when a fight broke out at the waterfront, bottles were thrown, resulting in injuries to 4 police officers. It was a clear sign that security measures had to evolve. Still, the turnout proved worth the effort. Caribana used its earnings that year to eliminate $43,000 in debt, not bad for a festival that many critics had dismissed as unruly and unsustainable. And in 1985, the festival scaled up yet again. The budget hit $450,000, over 300,000 people attended the parade, and the city? Total gridlock. The Gardiner Expressway came to a halt, University Avenue was shut down, and police scrambled to reroute traffic across downtown. Despite tighter security, one officer was stabbed, a stampede also broke out on the islands during the final day, but even with the chaos, the energy of the festival stayed electric.
In 1986, the Caribbean Cultural Committee's annual meeting turned into a full-on political carnival. But this is less soca, more shouting. Arguments erupted over finances, leadership, and how band leaders were being treated. Many described it as the stormiest meeting in Caribana history, a full-on democratic reckoning. That same year, Hamilton debuted its own carnival, called it Carican. Meanwhile, Caribana expanded further, introducing new programs like Kwabena, which blended Guyanese and broader Caribbean culture, and Soca Fest, an event that supported the Canadian Sickle Cell Society. The Caribana parade continued to draw massive crowds. More than 300,000 people were expected, with again, visitors flying in from all over North America, the Caribbean, and Europe. The momentum was no longer just local. It had gone global. In 1987, Caribana officially entered the big leagues. Around 500,000 people attended the parade. The economic impact on Toronto reached 30 million. The festival schedule was packed with events like the Junior Carnival, the King and Queen Showcase, arts and crafts markets, ferry cruises, and more. It was a full-on cultural experience. By 1988, the focus turned towards families and children. There were more craft stations, more live concerts, and a new art exhibit that featured both Caribbean and Latin American artists. Attendance skyrocketed to an estimated 700,000 people. Toronto couldn't get enough. The following year, in '89, organizers experimented with a new parade route. It now began at Wellington Street and ended near Queen's Park. They also introduced a creative environmental message. Shadowlands Theater Band highlighted tropical deforestation using a giant tree-themed costumes. It was an artistic blend of masquerade and sustainability. And just like that, we enter the 90s with bigger parades, corporate money, and a whole lot of growing pains.
In 1990, the festival aimed even higher, but not everything landed. A major concert at the Skydome featured Ice-T, Maestro, and Regina Belle, but only 2,000 tickets were sold out of a possible 30,000. The Miss Caribana pageant was also discontinued, following critiques that it lacked cultural depth. Even so, the parade itself was a massive success. Attendance was estimated at close to 1 million people. Caribana had outgrown University Avenue, and organizers began seriously considering a move to Exhibition Place. There was also talk of introducing admission fees to better manage the crowds. By 1991, that shift became reality. The parade was rerouted through Exhibition Stadium and west along Lakeshore Boulevard to Parkside Drive. Around the same time, the Royal Ontario Museum tried to rebuild trust after a racist exhibit by launching a new Caribbean costume showcase that was co-curated with the community. Caribana's board underwent major changes after issues with financial mismanagement, but big sponsors stepped in. Teleglobe, Molson, Max, and Coca-Cola all joined. That year's parade drew 1.2 million people, and the festival cut its debt from 562,000 down to 300,000. This was a major recovery. Unfortunately, Teleglobe pulled out the next year. Feeling undervalued, they withheld $75,000 in funding, which meant the festival couldn't pay out prize money. It was a setback, but not a collapse. In 1992, the Caribbean Cultural Committee opened a photo exhibit at College Park to highlight the artistry behind mass costumes. Vendors played a bigger role in supporting the event, and the City of Toronto forgave more than $100,000 in outstanding debt. That year's parade drew an unprecedented 1.5 million people, but the night ended in tragedy. 2 shootings and a stabbing forced organizers to shut down the remaining events. Still, the festival's economic impact was undeniable. Caribana brought in an estimated $250 million. That's more than a celebration. That's serious economic power. But success brought scrutiny. Throughout the late 90s, Caribana continued to grow, but so did the pressure. Behind the scenes, tensions simmered over funding, representation, and who had the right to steer the festival. The cracks in leadership that had long been papered over were starting to widen. The storm wasn't coming, it was already here. And by the time we hit the 2000s, the cracks weren't cracks anymore, they were fault lines. The 2000s brought financial instability, fractured leadership, and growing tension over who truly controlled Caribana. The early 2000s felt less like a carnival and more like a municipal audit. Caribana's finances were in crisis. Years of volunteer-run operations without a solid business model had caught up. In 2006, after mounting debts and mismanagement, the City of Toronto froze its funding and demanded a full overhaul. That's when the Festival Management Committee, or FMC, was created. It was meant to be a temporary fix, but like most things labeled temporary in Toronto, it stuck. Nearly 2 decades later, the FMC still controls the festival, despite mounting criticism that it operates without authentic ties to the Carnival tradition or the Caribbean community. The FMC was joined by corporate sponsorship. In 2007, Scotiabank came on as title sponsor, and the festival was renamed the Scotiabank Toronto Caribbean Carnival.
For many, that marked a turning point. The energy shifted. The name, the tone, the vibe. It all started to feel less like a cultural celebration and more like a marketing campaign. Even though Scotiabank didn't officially dictate programming, the optics told a different story. Community trust eroded, and when Scotiabank later tried to trademark the Caribana name, the Caribana Arts Group fought back and won. They proved that the name and the legacy belonged to the people who built it, not a bank. But That didn't undo the deeper damage. Mask makers, calypso performers, and steel pan bands were being left out of decisions. There was still no Central Caribbean cultural space. And the money? Year after year, Caribana brings $438 million of economic boost to the city, yet only a fraction returns to the hands of the people who create it. Masqueraders grew frustrated with stormers crashing the parade, spectators complained about admission fees and fences, and the community at large? Many felt the festival had become something that happened to them, not something shaped by them. There was a growing feeling that Caribana had become a corporate shill, sanitized and separated from its roots.
By the late 2010s, that tension had settled into a kind of uneasy routine. The festival kept going, but many in the community felt like they were showing up out of habit, not pride. Then, just as conversations about reform were starting to build momentum, everything stopped. The pandemic brought everything to a halt. For the first time in its history, Caribana was canceled. No parade, no mass, no music. Just silence where joy was supposed to be. But even in the quiet, the culture didn't fade. In 2021, the community responded with creativity and resilience, organizing Caribbean food truck rallies, virtual DJ sets, calypso showcases, and online cultural panels. It wasn't the same, but it was something. It reminded us all the culture isn't just the event, it's the people.
And when the festival returned, it was clear how much had been missed. Michael Montano headlined the Grand Parade. The Junior Carnival, King and Queen Showcase, and everything came back in full force. Over 1 million people turned out, and the city saw more than $400 million in economic activity. But despite the numbers and the headlines, the core questions remain. Who truly controls Caribana? Who benefits from its growth? Who sets its direction? There was still no cultural infrastructure, still no Caribbean community center downtown, still no lasting vision for how to support and sustain the festival. That's not just frustrating, it's painful, because the real power of Caribana has never been the sponsorships or the spectacle. It's the people. The mask builders working all summer to perfect a single costume, the steel pan instructors passing rhythms from generation to generation, the volunteers feeding production crews, the artists creating legacy through craft, the kids seeing themselves reflected in a festival that was made for them. That's where the meaning lives. That's where the legacy stands. And if Toronto truly wants to honor that legacy, admiration isn't enough. It needs investment. It needs leadership that reflects the culture. It needs fairness and funding and a long-term commitment. Things like community-led organizing, stronger protections for masqueraders, and maybe finally, a Toronto that understands Caribana isn't just a party, it's a promise. And hey, if this episode had you whining in your chair or waving your imaginary flag, we've got another one for you. Go check out the episode on the Patty Wars. Yes, that time the federal government tried to tell Jamaican patty shops they couldn't use the word patty. Spoiler, Toronto said absolutely not.
While you're there, if you like this episode, help us out. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and tell your friends. The more ears, the better.
And we really do love hearing from you. Adam, tell the good people where they can reach us.
You can find us on email at muddy_york@outlook.com. We have feeds on Twitter at Toronto_history, Blue Sky at Muddy York, all one word, and Facebook at Muddy York History, again, all one word. And before we sign off, I want to give our regards to somebody, or maybe two people. When we look at the stats for this podcast, they give us sort of a broad outline of where people are listening from. And as you might expect, most of the listeners are Canadian and most come from Ontario. The next most popular place for listeners is the United States. And there is a very small number of downloads from Tacoma, Washington. This is one or possibly two people who, through one means or another, have come across us and have become regular listeners. So To whomever you are, I just wanted to say we see you and we appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Until next time, I'm Grayson Miller.
And I'm Adam Weiser.